Shhh. Digital Media presents Part 5 and the finale of The Butterfly Dragon, What Different Eyes See, Vietnam Special Edition by Brian Joseph Johns. Trucking spilled paint. The last of the crates of paintings had been carried out by the men of the armed forces and loaded onto the back of two separate cargo trucks. Guoc Phuong had tried her best to negotiate a deal with the lieutenant and his sergeant, but to no avail. Their orders were from near the top, and they were to become the property of the state and protected under the Secrets Act of Vietnam. After the paintings had been loaded into the trucks, the platoon poured into their own military vehicles and accompanied the transport of the paintings to a base just on the outskirts of Hanoi. As the trucks left on their journey, Hay Lin and Monique landed nearby the bunker. "I think the coast is clear. I could check out the entire bunker in less than 3 seconds if you want," asked Monique. "Do it." Before Hay Lin barely had the words out of her mouth, Monique was already gone. 2.5 seconds later, Monique appeared as if she'd gone nowhere. "The coast is clear. There's nobody in there. Not even the university team," Monique advised Hay Lin. "All right, let's go in and see what we can find," Hay Lin told Monique. The two of them flew quickly to the entrance of the bunker. Hay Lin made quick work of the lock and door the military had replaced, easily crushing them and ripping the hinges. She tossed the door aside and walked in. "Need some light, boss?" Monique asked, suddenly transforming into her light form, quickly illuminating the interior of the bunker. "I was going to say no, but thank you anyway," Hay Lin responded, looking around with her draconic senses. "They've removed all of the crates. All but one," Monique mentioned. "Let's see it." Hay Lin found her way to the main room within the bunker, making her way over to the only remaining crate. She touched it and immediately saw the convoy of trucks traveling a large road, eastbound out of the city. "They're taking them to a nearby facility for storage. Let's go," Hay Lin told Monique. They quickly exited the bunker, not bothering to replace the door. Another moment, and they were both into the air, in flight, speeding towards the convoy. "I'm going to need you to cover for me when I try to get in that truck," Hay Lin yelled to Monique as they flew. "No problem. I'll block their line of sight," Monique suggested. "All right, let's go." Hay Lin dove at the second-last truck in the convoy as Monique ran cover for her. Monique transformed into a black cloud of mist, spreading herself thin enough to block the view of the other trucks, keeping watch, while Hay Lin flew in the back of the truck, looking for the crates. She suddenly stopped when she realized that she jumped into one of the transports. She suddenly found herself surrounded by a truck full of burly soldiers. The nearest of them quickly jumped on her, attempting to overwhelm her and pin her on the floor of the truck. She resisted, easily throwing 3 of them from her right arm to the front of the truck, then launched herself into the air through the ceiling of the truck as 2 of the soldiers managed to cling to her legs. She flew upwards 20 feet from the top of the truck, matching the vehicle's forward speed. She then kicked the 2 soldiers from her legs. They fell the 20-foot distance back into the truck from whence they had come, with only minor injuries. "That didn't exactly turn out the way I wanted," Hay Lin yelled, hoping Monique might hear. Instead, Monique remained in her mist form, obscuring the view of the other trucks. "I've got to find the right truck before they alert the others," Hay Lin thought out loud. On a whim, she quickly flew towards one of the other trucks closer to the center of the convoy. As she flew in the opening at the back of the truck, she observed that it only held crates. "Now we're talking," she thought out loud once again. She opened one of the crates, touching the first painting she could reach. Nothing happened. "Where is that mischievous dragon when I need it?" She tried one of the other paintings. Once again, nothing. She closed the crate and opened another, firmly grasping at the frame of the first painting within. As she did, she was suddenly transported to a distant time in the not-so-long-ago past. She was looking at a canvas. Hay Lin floated backwards to see that it was a teenage girl with a paintbrush in hand. Hay Lin examined her and saw that she was Vietnamese. She was thin, somewhat gangly, and yet driven to finish her work on the canvas. Hay Lin felt it as the girl's aura was powerful. She spied a Roman calendar on the wall and noted that it was June 13th, 1987. On the wall beside the calendar was a flyer that appeared to be some kind of state propaganda. The poster read, "Renewal." Possibly urban renewal? Her attention drifted back to the canvas. The girl began to apply the paint to the canvas, using various shades of red, some orange hues, and a prominent yellow, perhaps keeping in line with the Vietnamese flag, though what she painted was certainly more protest than it was praise. She seemed to be using her art as a form of rebellion. At that moment, a door burst open and a young man ran in the room. "We have to go! Now! Everything is arranged and we can't afford to have them wait another night," the young man pleaded with the girl. "I'm not going with them, Du. I want to stay here. This is my home," she screamed back at him. "Quiet! They'll hear and come take us away. We have to go now, Yen." Du urged Yen with all of his heart. She stopped a moment as tears filled her eyes. She then screamed, throwing her brush at the wall as she broke down. "I'm going to start the rickshaw. It's loaded with all of the food. I'm leaving in 3 minutes. I'll miss you," Du told Yen. He then turned around and walked out of the door. Yen slumped to the floor, still crying. She looked around the room she'd lived in secretly for so many years of her life as a youth. She stood, taking a look at her finished painting. She then found another paintbrush, a thin one. She then signed the painting, V. Kanara. Yen made her way to the corner where she retrieved a familiar work of art. It was the first painting Halen had seen in her initial vision. A divided country where the red of north fought the yellow of south. In the middle of the painting, a solitary half-star bound by a heart bridged the red and the yellow together. "Goodbye, my troubled friend," Yen spoke to the painting. She stood looking at the painting and her paints for the last time. She went to another one of her finished works, picking it up and tucking it under her arm. Then she left through the same door as Du. Moments later, Halen could hear the sound of the rickshaw driving off, and she was suddenly returned to the back of the truck. Halen ripped the painting she'd just touched out of the crate and immediately began searching. She turned the painting over and examined all of the nails and bindings, keeping the canvas bound to its frame. On one of the corners, she found that the canvas was excessive, folded over several times. She unfolded the canvas and within found an old piece of paper that had faded with age. On that piece of paper, she found a list. It was a long list of what she presumed to be names, perhaps 100 or more in all. At the top of the list, she saw a title, as in the title given a person for their vocation or job. The title was that of captain. The 2 words beside it were also in Vietnamese, but thanks to the deterioration of the paper and the fact that it had faded, the name was illegible. This is a manifest. For what? Halen held the paper in her hand as the truck gently rocked back and forth. There was a sudden startling sound as Monique appeared beside Halen. "Boss, they just figured out you're in this truck. They're slowing the convoy and readying their weapons for a fight. We'd better go." Monique urged Halen. "Grab a painting in each hand and fly as fast as you can for Miss Huevan's estate. I'll meet you there. Stay hidden until I arrive." Halen ordered Monique, who immediately complied. With a painting in each of her hands, Monique flew at near the speed of light for Miss Huevan's estate, arriving in less than a second. Halen grabbed herself the painting she'd just touched and another one randomly from the same box. Then she flew out the back of the truck as the convoy slowed to stop. By the time they arrived at the truck she'd just vacated, she was already 4 kilometers away. She tucked the 2 paintings under her one arm, and with the other, she called Alicia. "Have Thuk drive you and the rest of the delegation to Miss Huevan's estate. I think we're gonna meet there and wrap this whole thing up." Halen spoke over the smartphone. "All right, we're leaving now. They're not gonna be happy, but we'll meet you there in about 40 minutes, Alicia promised Halen. She then used the voice recognition of her phone to dial the number of a contact she had at a Canadian news media outlet. Hi, Janice, this is Haylin. Haylin Yates, she spoke into the phone. Hi, Haylin. Long time no speak. Are you in a wind tunnel? 'Cause I can barely make out what you're saying. Janice, an investigative journalist friend of hers, responded. No, I'm just flying over Hanoi, and I guess the engines are kind of noisy where I'm sitting. Look, I need a favor. Could you look up any references to the names Yen, Tien, and Du Duong in North America between 1986 and 1988? They're Vietnamese, if that helps. Haylin spoke up in an elevated voice. Sure. Give me a second here. Janice navigated to her company's internet search system. There was a pause as Janice scanned the results. I've got several references to Duong, a lot of them sports-related or local community interest stories. In both the United States and Canada, Haylin responded. Can you narrow it down with the keyword refugee? Asked Haylin. As she lost her grip on one of the paintings, she watched as it tumbled in a flat spin, falling toward the jungle canopy below. Did you say referee? Janice confirmed as Haylin folded her wings, turning and diving after the falling painting. No, I said refugee. Haylin reached out for the spinning painting, just missing it. What? I can barely hear you. Are you having aircraft problems? Janice asked her. Just a bit of turbulence. I said refugee. Haylin raised her voice an extra decibel for Janice as she still pursued the painting on its rapid spinning descent. Oh, refugee. I'll try that. Janice typed into the internet's search results filter. Haylin made another attempt to grab the painting, this time using the pause in their conversation to focus her skills. Her hand moved fast and snatched the painting by the frame without damaging it. She stopped in mid-air, hovering with the phone pinned against her shoulder, examining the painting for any damage. Whew, that was close, Haylin thought aloud. What's that? Janice asked. I said, oh, look at that, we're having chicken roast for lunch. Great flight, but the pilot's a little clumsy. Haylin responded quick on her wit. Found it! There's one entry with those two names and that filtering term. What's the story? Haylin yelled. They landed on Vancouver Island in the 1980s, early 1988 to be exact. They requested asylum under the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, hence their names were withheld from any news publications of the time, Janice explained. Does it list the captain's name? Haylin asked, still hovering in the air. Yes, it does. His name is Hang Chi Kwan. Haylin kept the phone pinned between her face and shoulder. Disguise 3. That's Disguise 3, Haylin thought aloud once again. What? Janice asked Haylin. I said the drinks are free. On this flight, I mean. I never knew. Haylin covered her tracks. Are you sure that you're not a few sheets to the west right now? Janice confirmed with Haylin. No, but I owe you. On the next girls' night out, dinner and drinks are on me, Haylin responded. I'm game for that. Gotta go, our senior editor just walked in. Janice hung up the phone. Haylin relaxed her neck and her phone fell from her face and began plunging towards the ground 1,000 meters below. She immediately dove once again, speeding towards it, wondering how she was going to catch it with a painting in each hand. Here goes nothing. Haylin sped downward after the phone. As she approached it, she opened her mouth. She tightened her lips as soon as she made contact, biting the phone with her teeth. I need a head's net. She struggled to talk with the phone in her mouth. She put one of the paintings under her arm and retrieved the phone from her mouth. She then put the phone in her belt pouch and took a painting in each hand, careful not to damage them. She flew in the direction of the Oriental Jade Hotel and quickly found the van as it headed for the lonely road following the Great River. At Mystery's End, Thuc parked the D-car van in front of the estate and let his passengers out. They congregated near the front door where they were met by Nguyen, who welcomed them into the estate. We're still waiting for 2 more, Alicia told Nguyen. Haylene's obviously fashionably late, and Monique is just the fastest slowpoke in the West, Valerie remarked sarcastically and with truthful irony. Miss Huevon will see you now, Nguyen stated for them in her best English. I just said we're waiting for 2 others, Alicia reminded Nguyen. I will bring them when they arrive, Nguyen assured Alicia. Alicia looked to Valerie and then to Zhang. Time is of the essence, Nguyen continued. I suppose that we can start this off and continue when they get here, Alicia finally agreed. Nguyen led the group through the estate's myriad of rooms and restored temple chambers into the same solarium where they had initially met Miss Wen. At this time, the sun's illumination was replaced by the moon, which hung directly overhead, shining brightly through the solarium glass. Amazingly, the moon by itself managed to fully light the room, thanks to a series of cleverly devised parabolic mirrors, both convex and concave, each of which were polarized to prevent their reflecting direct sunlight during the day. Only the moon's light was embraced by their reflective qualities, and on this night, the effect was stunning. Impressive, Alicia said as she entered the room. Designed by an engineer friend of mine years ago. He works for the country's civil engineering department now. You could even say that this project was his job application, Miss Huivon stated, as she stood from her perch at the table to greet her guests. We're here with some information about the case you hired us for. Alicia kept the topic on track. You've brought others with you, and it would be oh so rude not to meet them, don't you agree? Miss Huivon, she asked, almost rhetorically. Of course. This is... Alicia started the introductions before she was interrupted by Miss Huivon. Zhang Ni Wang. Mathematical genius, especially in the field of computation. A bright little girl whose straight A grades certainly made her the subject of much admiration and scorn. So sad that your mother died of cancer when you were only 13. Instead of grieving, you strive to succeed, to honor your mother. I guess that you and Alicia are more alike than you would otherwise have known. Miss Huivon began. I forgot to tell you she does this. Alicia looked down, shaking her head. Dr. Stephen Briggs, psychologist and sociologist and a specialist in East Asian culture and history. Struggled to pay for a schooling for years, nearly declaring bankruptcy. Must have been nice to have the alumni bail you out with that cushy research job, Miss Huivon said scathingly. I earned that position fair and square, Miss Huivon. Still, it's a pleasure to meet you. Dr. Briggs kept his grace. Katya and Victor Piotr. Oh no, here we go, Victor remarked sarcastically. Katya tugged his hand. The couple who have been together since they were children. Best friends in kindergarten and grade school, and then girlfriend and boyfriend in university. Inseparable. What mystery lays beneath their seemingly flawless rise to success? Relatives and friends with the ruling party in the USSR? That must have been so hard to swallow when the Berlin Wall came down and the USSR collapsed shortly thereafter. Nobody left to protect you and ensure you had a prosperous vocation anymore? Just little Katya and Victor to fend for themselves in this harsh world. Ironically, you found your fortune in feces. Miss Huivon laid them bare. You have no idea how difficult it was for us at that time. For our parents, Victor tensed. Victor, it's all right. She's been through the mill too. It's like a test, Katya urged Victor to hang on. A pleasure to meet you, Miss Huivon, Victor said, somewhat scornfully. Yes, it is a pleasure, Katya added. Last but not least, and certainly the most mysterious of all, Linda Delmore, Miss Huivon stated as if savoring the moment. Take your best shot, Linda dared Miss Huivon. According to court logs, that's one of the very things you said to your ex on the night you ejected him from your shared home. Oh, so confrontational and competitive. You always had to be the best at everything. If one or more people wanted something, you had to have it more so than they. Yet you never understood yourself and what you truly wanted in life. That's why your marriage failed. You were in a perpetual competition with your own husband, working with him at the same company and competing for the attention and admiration of the employees and clients both. If he got a raise, then you had to get more than him. You even brought those traits with you to Vietnam, as I'm sure that Zhang will agree, seeing as you both want the same thing. Yet her desire is sincere, and yours is simply because she wants it. I think they call people like that sociopaths. Miss Huet Van stripped Linda to the bone. That was pretty good. You definitely hit me. Though the court battle with my ex-husband was a bit more intimidating, you certainly have a way with words, as much so as I have a way with sarcasm. By the way, pleased to meet you, Miss Huet Van. Linda's bottom lip quivered as she neared the brink of tears. With all of you digging into the very depths of my personal life, some of my most treasured and intimate memories in life, it is the least that I can do to lay you bare. Return you to your own humility, something I'm sure that Linda left behind long ago. Miss Huet Van finished with her. There was a moment of most uncomfortable silence. Finally, we come to Professor Bryce Maxwell, esteemed quantum physicist, quantum biologist, an accomplished jazz piano player, a charismatic celebrity in his own right, an icon to many of his students and peers, and yet one who struggled a difficult path. He came from a family with little money and few connections and grew up on a farm in the midst of farming community on the outskirts of Toronto. His family moved into rural parts of the city, and during his high school years, he was forced to pay sponsorship for esteemed blood or lineage by bullies in a cruel and yet hidden system of social hierarchy operating amidst even the most advanced Western societies. He strived and succeeded in high school, though it would seem that Bryce risked falling for his own iconification, and yet his high school sweetheart and wife, Wendy, would keep him balanced in ego and humility. Let me ask you this, Bryce. Were you a party to Sylvia Upadhyay's downfall and social smothering in life? You remember her, don't you? Fellow researcher with whom you worked on the project that found her ejected from both the physics and medical community? Alicia's other hero. Ms. Huet Van began her lecture. Dr. Upadhyaya was a most gracious lady and certainly one of the most forward thinkers I've ever met. Some of her concepts regarding the placebo effect and its relationship to the Schrödinger equation are nothing short of remarkable. Although my influence may have delayed her downfall, had I stepped in fully, I would have ended up in a similar fate to her, dropped by all research channels and disregarded by my peers, purposefully forgotten, like a disregarded memory. There are some things in life that you take on directly, and some that you take on with your ability to open the eyes of those you influence. At that time and in that situation, I chose the latter, while Sylvia chose the former. Bryce explained in his own defense. He spoke not as much for himself and his own esteem, more so out of his father-like concern for Alicia, her well-being, and most importantly, her peace of mind.
It's all right, Bryce. I knew in my heart of hearts that you had nothing to do with that, Alicia assured her inspiration and hero. Please, make yourselves comfortable. The tea is on its way. So, what is this information you wish to bring to my attention? Miss Huet Van asked. You have a way with guests. Glad to see that the interrogation process is over. On to the torture, then? Asked Linda, remaining consistently defiant as she'd been in her previous statement. We've uncovered a lot with regard to the search for your baby girl, though there are still many missing pieces. We do have some solid theories based upon the evidence and witness accounts. Alicia sat down at the table and pulled her tablet from her purse. Then explain in words. We'll look over the details later, Miss Huet Van requested. All right. Sometime in 1962, a teenaged farm girl who works both in the rice fields and driving deliveries of goods to market is hired by the North Vietnamese Intelligence Unit to work as an operative for their operations in Hanoi. She isn't told directly whom her employers are, just that they are part of the North Vietnamese government and the people who oversee the collectivization of food distribution, as per their political mandate. Please do go on, Miss Huet Van insisted. They ensure that their delivery route leads through a series of markets in Hanoi they're targeting as part of their counterinsurgency program. They even tell this delivery girl where and when to stop for lunch, giving her a different break location each time, Alicia explained. Interesting, Miss Huet Van responded. Their planning pays off, and this girl is approached by another girl who befriends her in 1967. After checking out the delivery girl thoroughly, she eventually gives the okay to a man we'll call Disguise 3 to meet the delivery girl, now 22, at one of her lunch stops. They eventually meet and become friends and then lovers. Disguise 3 eventually talks the girl into giving him one of the fruits she's carrying to the last trip on her daily schedule, indicating that this fruit will always have incisions on its top and bottom. She agrees. Shocked the first time she examines the fruit, she finds his description that upon examination, it contains a paper message on waterproof paper. Alicia continued her explanation. "This is a very interesting story," Miss Wayvun responded.
The intelligence unit, having kept an eye on her, bring her in for questioning. They tell her that she's at risk of losing her job and that the delivery company will turn her family in as South Vietnamese spies. They use that to strong-arm her into working for them. They tell her that they'll give her a fruit with a fake message hidden inside, and that she is to give Disguise 3 that fruit, while she keeps the fruit with the real message hidden in her dashboard basket, giving it to the foreman at the last stop on her delivery manifest, Alicia uncovered, and Miss Hui Vun nodded. This ruse works, and Disguise 3 is fed false intelligence as the North Vietnamese intelligence unit determines that he's working for the Americans who are funding the South Vietnamese war effort, supplying troops and engaged in an extensive bombing and air campaign. The NVIU began analyzing the structure of Disguise 3's insurgent network. Alicia continued their hypothesis. In 1971, they initiate a sting operation, where they corner Disguise 3 on a bridge. During a shootout, Disguise 3 is shot, falls off the bridge, and dies hitting the water or sometime thereafter. The delivery girl is found having fled to a local rice farm. She's detained and found to be pregnant. They let her carry the child to term, and upon giving birth, they take the child from the delivery girl, setting her free to continue working on the same farm. The NVIU's success in feeding false intelligence to the enemy and dismantling Disguise 3's network results in serious gains for the war effort. The state, wanting to avoid the bad publicity of having used the girl this way, instead decides to make her into a hero of the regime, Ho Chi Minh's Communist Party, giving her the credit she deserves for her part in taking down Disguise 3's network and dissolving the American intelligence effort in Hanoi. They give a one-time bursary of millions in payment for her work, making her sign documents that if she reveals the truth about how she was pressured into taking on that role for the NVIU, she would be tried and executed. She agrees, accepting the immense responsibility thrust upon her, and decides to do good with her power and influence, building her own empire. Alicia uncovered for Miss Hui Vun. "You've certainly unraveled the mystery of my story, but you've revealed nothing of what you've learned of my baby girl," Miss Hui Vun said sternly.
"Your baby girl was a painter. She loves art and painting. She did from a young age, where she was raised in a state-run nursery and kept away from you," Zhang continued. "Go on, Zhang," Miss Hui Vun urged the mathematician. "She somehow escaped from the nursery, or when she was a bit older, from a state-run school. From there, she used her artistic talent as a political statement against the divisions in Vietnamese society at that time, and the fact that most people were starving as a result of collectivization and communist rule." Zhang painted her own picture for Miss Hui Vun. "There are some elements of your theory that might be true," Miss Hui Vun agreed skeptically. "Somewhere along the line, she died or was murdered. Her paintings were confiscated by the state and held as state secrets while she was erased from the public memory in attempt to quell the divisions in Vietnamese society. That's why the paintings were stored in the bunker we found. They were buried from the public's view. Even the first painting was kept in the cold storage at the university because it's a part of history that most want to keep buried." Zhang detailed her hypothesis. "Not bad. You know, you really should start up your own thing."
Scooby-Doo has nothing on any of you. You really seem to be good at this. But you did miss a few minor details, the alleged company man said, as he walked into the room, a submachine gun in his hand, and aimed at the group of them. 3 other men followed behind him, each with their own similar firearms. "Oh no, not with the guns again," Valerie smirked, somewhat unimpressed. "Valerie, there's too many people here at risk. Don't try anything," Alicia urged Valerie quietly. "What details are those?" Miss Huevon asked, seemingly unfazed or perturbed by the men and their guns. "This is a bit more complicated than you think. It's probably a bit too much for you to wrap your head around," the alleged company man explained. "You love to talk. Enlighten us," Valerie pushed him with her words. "You're mouthy. Did anyone ever tell you that?" The alleged company man pointed his gun at her. "All the more to kiss," Valerie responded with wit, more so than brawn, having heeded Hyland's advice.
So you missed a few details along the way, and it just so happens that I have a theory about what really happened, and from a much different perspective. You see, it's true, I am a company man, just not the company that you're thinking, the alleged company man boasted. "You mean that you're not CIA?" Alicia confirmed with him. "Hate to break it to you, I'm not. Never was. However, like your friend Miss Hoover Dam here, I have my own contacts in the Vietnamese government. You see, I've been doing business with them for a long time, a family-run business. My father gave me his contacts, and I continued the family business from there," the company man explained to them. "What business is that?" Alicia asked. "Why, the biggest business in Vietnam. Human cargo. Or at least it was until renewal. These so-called reforms, or renewal, which basically saw Vietnam reinstitute its free market system, meaning that starvation was no longer a problem, seeing as there was incentive for farmers to bring food to market to earn money. The more they produced, the more money they made. Unfortunately, in my family business, that reform had dire consequences, because instead of fleeing the country, South Vietnamese sympathizers were starting to take part in their new communist country. A free market brings with it a lot of opportunity. Ask Miss Hoover Dam here. She built a business empire here, employing many people in her markets and spas. Unfortunately for my business, it didn't help at all. My father died poor and drunk while I tried to carry on the family business, expanding into other ports of call, looking for any crisis in the world that would bring business. Myanmar has been a windfall for me. So many people fleeing that they're willing to pay just about anything to leave and get a trip to the West, the company man explained. "You're a human trafficker?" Alicia said in disgust. "No, more like a human cargo specialist out of work. I'm doing everything I can to change that, though. You see, Miss Hoover Dam's little project here has opened up some deep wounds in this country for me to create turmoil and exploit," the alleged company man, ergo human cargo specialist, replied. "He's going to use Miss Hui Von's effort to uncover her truth to create dissension and possibly war in the country and bring about scandal in the government in order to increase demand for his services," Zhang noted. "Precisely. Something that you didn't know, Miss Hoover Dam, is that the man you call Disguise 3, whose real name is Han Chi Quan, worked with my father," the human cargo specialist explained. "You mean Disguise 3 was a human trafficker?" Zhang confirmed what she'd just heard. "No, he wasn't. He worked with many who could get persecuted South Vietnamese public figures to the safety of amnesty in other countries. But he wasn't a trafficker," Halen said from behind the company man. "Well, well, look who decided to show up. I was wondering where you were." The human cargo specialist turned to face Halen. "Perhaps you'd like to join your friends so that nobody gets hurt?" The human cargo specialist ordered her to join her friends in the room. "He's played us all," Halen said in realization. "Fast forward to the part after that. We're already there," Valerie responded sarcastically.
A very old man stepped out from behind Miss Hui Wan. He was at least 20 years Miss Hui Wan's senior. Meet Giang Quy, the former North Vietnamese Intelligence Unit's tactical team commander. He worked with them during the mid-1960s through to the mid-1970s. Miss Hui Wan introduced the new arrival. "We have a regular party going here, a bash at the seniors' home." The human cargo specialist scolded them. "This man is a fool," Giang said firmly in an elderly voice. "Old man, you're knocking on death's door in more ways than one," the human cargo specialist said. "That's the man that shot Disguise 3, Halen accused Giang. "You mean Han Chi Quan," the human cargo specialist said. Han Chi Quan was a regular in the South Vietnamese Armed Forces. He was picked by the Americans for his unique skill set to work as an operative for their intelligence unit in Hanoi, being a native of Vietnam and being fluent in a number of regional languages, including English. The problem is that he was sold out by the company man's father to the North Vietnamese government, who shared that information with the North Vietnamese intelligence unit. Company man's father was paid a sizable sum for that information. His father then took that money and bought numerous boats, barely seaworthy, and charged exorbitant prices to those fleeing South Vietnam. Giang exposed more of the human cargo specialist's filth. "That's how I learned about Han Chi Quan. The intelligence unit director gave my unit the task of dismantling Han Chi Quan's network in Hanoi. I hired Miss Hui Wan for that task, though. I didn't tell her what she was doing. She trusted me and did everything I asked on trust alone." Zhang explained it from his perspective. "You killed that girl's father," Halen accused Zhang once again. "I did many things in my life that I regret, but what I did with Han Chi Quan, I'll never regret," Zhang told them as a tear welled up beneath his left eye. "You hunted down a man, and when he was at your mercy, you shot him." Halen came back strong at Zhang. "No, that is not what happened," Zhang cried. "Then what?" Halen pressed the man. "I pursued him on the bridge that day. He was trying to escape on a stolen auto rickshaw. I had another team on the other end of the bridge, and I radioed them to collide with the rickshaw in order to stop it." Zhang told his story. "They did, and we quickly pulled our vehicles up and surrounded Han Chi Quan. He raised his hands and waited for me to get close enough to him. I asked him to turn around and show me his back. He started to turn and disarmed me with a swift kick. He even caught my gun in mid-flight and used it to detain me as a hostage. He was very skilled," Zhang told the group. "Get on with it, old man," the company man urged Zhang. He then leapt over the rail of the bridge. One of the snipers for my unit took the shot and clipped Han Chi Quan as he was in the air. Fortunately, it was only a superficial wound, lucky for him. I ordered my team to hold the bridge and not to pursue me. I told them I had to finish Han to protect the country, Zhang said as he recalled that day. I ran to the end of the bridge and climbed down to the shore of the river. When I got there, Han was out of breath, on his stomach. I ordered him to turn over. He complied. I told him what I must do, and he faced me with courage and determination I'd never seen in the eyes of any man. I leveled my gun at his head. I pulled the trigger. Once, twice, 3 times in total. All 3 shots had landed, hitting their target precisely 10 inches from his head. We stared at each other for a long while before I said to him, "There, you're dead. You're free to go, but be very, very discreet and don't come back." Zhang confessed to those in the room. "I thought you killed him," Halen said as a tear fell from her eye.
"Kill him? How could I? He's the father of my daughter's child," Yang told them. "You mean Miss Hui Wan is—" "Yes, she's my daughter," Yang told them as he moved closer to Miss Hui Wan, taking her hand. "Where is your granddaughter, Miss Hui Wan's daughter?" Alicia asked.
That's what we hired you to find out, Yang admitted to them. I hate to break this to you, but we're going to have to cut this whole deal short. You see, in about half an hour, this estate is going to explode as part of an attack by Vietnamese reformists, and everyone inside will be killed. At least, that's what the investigators will be led to believe. Don't worry, though. You won't feel a thing. You'll all be long dead before then. This will be the first measure to instigate another civil war, hence bringing many opportunities for the business of war to bear on this nation, the human cargo specialist stated. Rather than Miss Wei Vun's business of peace and compassion, Halen turned to the human cargo specialist, something for which I, as a member of the armed forces, have fought to protect all of my life, Yang added. Sorry, but we all have to die sometime. The human cargo specialist opened fire. In the first 100th of a second, Halen's wings expanded out from her back, covering everyone in the room, shielding them from every shot. Her skin simultaneously turned draconic, as hardened metal scales covered her body, shattering every round that hit her. At nearly the same time, or even shortly before, Monique transformed herself to darkness, flying instantaneously around to where the human cargo specialist and his cohorts had begun opening fire on the room. As soon as Halen's wings were protecting everyone in the room, Monique burst into light with a thunderous clap, blinding the human cargo specialist and his gunmen. Alicia cartwheeled out from under Halen's protection, landing by the nearest gunman. She twisted his firearm, directing his firearm away from his targets in the room, and he followed her motion, unwilling to relinquish his weapon. She led him directly face first into one of the stone walls. He hit it with a thud, as Alicia followed through with her motion, using her momentum to snap the gun in two. Valerie had hefted a stone statue from a foundation, ready to pitch it at the gunman. "No, not that, please," Miss Wei Vun exclaimed.
Valerie shook her head in frustration with Miss Hui Wen, gently placing the statue back on the ground and instead walked over to the still blinded gunman. She lifted one in each hand, slamming them together hard enough to rend them unconscious without breaking their bones. The human cargo specialist, being the only one left, pulled a handgun from his belt when his submachine gun had run dry. He leveled the gun at Halen's head, attempting to aim for her eye. As he squeezed the trigger, Xiang had found a position from where he could take his own shot. His first round pierced the human cargo specialist's forearm, spinning him, sending his shot harmlessly into one of Halen's protective wings. The second shot hit the other arm near the shoulder. He then fell over, writhing in pain. The dust settled, and the room became silent. Halen's wings disappeared into her back, and her draconic scales withdrew into her body. Everyone seemed to be unscathed, but the human cargo specialist. They'd survived, and more importantly, they'd won. Father and daughter. "You didn't even give any help to Alicia, and you're a doctor," Linda scolded Dr. Briggs. "I'm just not that kind of doctor," Dr. Briggs admitted. Alicia stood as she finished applying a field dressing to the human cargo specialist's wounds. That should keep him safe for his trip to the hospital and then to prison. Alicia wiped her hands with a wet cloth Nugan had brought for her. "Not bad. Restrained and detained," Monique remarked. "De-brained, too," Valerie added her own 2 cents. "The ambulance and police are on their way." Tuk came and told them as they returned to the solarium. "Very good, Tuk. Thank you. That will be all," Miss Hui Vun told Tuk. Tuk turned and left the solarium as Miss Hui Vun directed her attention towards Halen. "I am impressed with your unique abilities and those of your friends. The rumors I've heard are true. You really are the butterfly dragon," Miss Hui Vun said in admiration, perhaps even gratefully so in her own way. "Did you send the dragon Welther Whisper to bring down our flight?" Halen asked. Miss Hui Vun paused to choose her words carefully, and then she spoke. "The dragon speaks of you highly, yet often alludes to the veil engulfing you that obscures the truth of reality from your awareness. You didn't answer me. Halen pressed the matter.
I implored the dragon to do what was necessary so that the future of which it was already aware could be achieved. Had it not intervened in your flight, then you'd have continued on to Ho Chi Minh City, where the bigger problems here in Hanoi and the traffickers' plot would remain, and have succeeded, possibly throwing this country into a civil war. Miss Huevon explained what was at risk. You risked all of those innocent lives, Halen accused her. Those and many other lives would have been lost had the traffickers' plot been allowed to see completion. The dragon did what it thought was necessary to bring you to bear on that problem, Miss Huevon corrected Halen. It would never do that, Halen defended. It would seem that veil of naivety is obscuring you now. Well, there would spiz of the dragon kind, and there are only two remaining. They are the universe and beyond it. They are what you'd refer to as the yin and the yang. Don't mistake Weltherwisp's whimsical nature as any kind of devotion to humankind. It is just playing out what it already knows. For Weltherwisp is cursed with the knowledge of reverse progression. You see, much like the legends of old, Weltherwisp was born at the end of the universe and all that is. At the end of time. It ages backwards, remembering the future, the same way that we remember the past. As instruments of yin-yang, the two dragons ensure that the past and the future occurred the way their memories perceived those two states of time. You are a fool to think that Weltherwisp holds any loyalty to humanity, for it is more like a force of nature and the universe itself. A tsunami doesn't stop and cry over the lives it takes, any more than a hurricane stops to ponder the meaning of life after having destroyed the coast. The water of tears are solely those of humanity. Miss Huevon explained the facts to Halen. You're lying. Jinhua would have told me. Halen receded, unable to believe her.
Jinhua and I are one and the same, and there are many like us. Consider us to be envoys between the will of the universe, the dragons who carry out that will, and humanity. Without us, the world would be crushed in the teetering of imbalance, crushed by the ever-competing forces of yin-yang. We have our role, you have yours. You are just jaded by the fact that you are learning that you're part of a much greater fold, one that has been obscured behind the veil of your naivety and inexperience, perhaps even the failings of your ego. Miss Huevon laid her bare. I will seek out Jinhua again and discuss this with her. However, I do accept your gracious apology for putting those lives at risk. Halen stood her ground, adding a thick serving of sarcasm. There was a moment of silence, where others less experienced may have succumbed to tension and even aggression. Instead, the two women just stared at each other, perhaps bounded equally by scorn and a mutual respect for each other. Now there's the matter of my daughter, Miss Huevon asked Halen as she joined the group in the solarium. Halen paused a moment before she moved to retrieve the paintings she and Monique had carried to the estate. These are paintings painted by your daughter. When she left her secret residence in Hanoi in the mid-1980s, she took one of her paintings with her. When she arrived at the port of her departure, she took a rough handwritten copy of the ship's manifest and hid it in that painting. She then gave the painting to one of the yeomans at the port. That painting was eventually sold by the yeoman and then confiscated by the authorities, who reunited it with the remainder of her works, which were now hidden in a locked bunker. The same manifest I have here for you to see. If you look closely, the faded name at the top is Han Chi Quan. He's listed as the captain. Halen handed the manifest to Miss Huevon, who examined it carefully. They set sail for North America in 1987 on the most seaworthy vessel any of the refugees had ever ridden in their attempt to find the solace they were so desperately seeking since the 1960s. Men like the human cargo specialist tried to exploit them for it. What we found is that Han Chi Quan and your daughter Yen Tian Quan landed off the coast of British Columbia in early 1988. perhaps the last of the refugees from Vietnam. Like many others, they settled in Canada and began again from absolutely nothing, Helen told Miss Hui Ven. There are people who come to the West seeking a new life and a new beginning from trying circumstances, whose travels and sometimes even future marriage partners are provided by someone who offers such a service in protection of those taking the chance of such a voyage. But what human cargo specialists did was a disgusting exploitation of human beings. Nonetheless, Han Chi-Kwan managed to get your daughter safely to Canada to begin again. Helen finished explaining the destiny of Miss Hui Ven's daughter. Miss Hui Ven was quiet for a moment. Her eyes glazed, but no tears came. Helen surmised that perhaps Miss Hui Ven struggled in an attempt to refrain from showing any weakness in her presence. Your daughter is a resident in Canada and still lives there to this day with her father, your lover, Han Chi-Kwan. Helen finished presenting her findings and urged the others to leave the room. I've made arrangements for the donation you requested I make upon the successful completion of this investigation. $2 million will be invested in organizations focusing on education, job training, and entrepreneurial development, Miss Hui Ven told Helen. Helen simply nodded and left the solarium, making her way to the front of the estate. Miss Hui Ven sat alone and contemplated the outcome. The members of the delegation left Miss Hui Ven in peace, following Helen to the front of the building where they organized themselves before their trip back to the Oriental Jade Hotel. Thousands of kilometers away, in the city of Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, in a backsplit bungalow just off of the Pacific Ocean, a phone rang. The sound of footsteps began in another part of the house, picking up pace on the second ring, and then rightfully hurried on the third. Hello? A young man, 22 years of age, answered the phone. May I speak with Yen? A woman's voice on the other end asked in Vietnamese. Grandpa, can you take a call? They're asking for Mom, and I think she's sleeping, the young man asked his grandfather. Sure, bring the phone to me, the grandfather requested. The grandfather, an elderly man, sat on an overstuffed chair where he'd been reading a book. The young man brought the phone to him and he put it to his face. Hello? Han speaking. Han Chi-Kwan answered.
There was a moment of awkward silence as Han heard the sound of crying on the other end of the phone. Hello? Are you all right? Do you need help? Han became concerned, leaning forward in his chair. A few moments later, there came a soft reply. I am Hui Van. Do you remember me? Miss Hui Van asked as she wiped tears of joy from her eyes. The end.